There's a lot of talk about uh, Islam being spread by the sword. And obviously, that's supported by the history that actually this, in fact, did happen. Now, if one ever read the Quran, he would know that this is actually against God's commandments, where God says, whoever wills, let him believe, and whoever wills, let him disbelieve. This is another one of those traditions, whether it be hadith based or simply invented by the people, that became an official doctrine, and this is simply due to ignorance. So their Quran, God does not prescribe any punishment for apostasy, nor for doctrinal differences like disagreeing about certain things. But to say that this is simply a Muslim issue is absolutely wrong. Uh, Crusades are full of such things. History is full of such things. Some of the Crusades, they were actually against other Christians, like Cathars, for example. They were murdered by the thousands because they simply disagreed with the official church doctrine. And that's just one example. You had the Orthodox Catholic split. You've had a number of Christians, you can call them sects, who continue to believe in God, but they just stopped believing in the official church doctrine. So the current church as we know it was actually spread by the sword. Not only by the sword, but also by the stake and the fire. Because they would burn people alive. So one must ask himself or herself the following question, if what we have now in either religion was spread with such cruelty, how do you be a part of that? Obviously, the Christians that did it did not follow Jesus, and Muslims that did it, they did not obey the Quran. So the labels that they carry are just empty labels. Okay, so that's something that needs to be understood. So you can't just say, "Oh yeah, Islam was spread by the sword." Islam was not spread by the sword because it's not allowed to be spread by the sword. What was spread by the sword is a doctrine that is very unlike what's in the Quran. And same goes for the Christianity. Christianity was not spread by the sword. It wasn't spread by the murder and torture and burning people alive. What we have, the blasphemy of what we have today is what was spread like that. There are plenty of other Christians who actually are Christians and do not subscribe to the current model. But it is this hypocrisy in our hearts that we really have to address before anything else happens. That, looking at the other side and not seeing your own side, which is exactly the same, is the problem. This same problem goes with veneration of the prophets. For example, Muslims will say, "Oh, Christians made Jesus God." The Christians didn't make Jesus God. Somebody made Jesus God. And people now blindly believe it. The fact that Jesus was not deemed God or Son of God is proved by the very need for the Council of Nicaea. People didn't believe that. Some people did, some people didn't. But the fact of the matter is that the official doctrine was spread by the sword. In the end, whoever disagreed died. But the point was veneration of the prophets, or even their deification. In the Gospels, Jesus is quoted as saying, "Our God," as in my God and your God, as in the God of both of us. So God does not have God. If Jesus was indeed God, he does not have God. He even prays to God. And even at one point where a rich person asks him, "Good teacher, how do I enter the kingdom of heaven?" He says, "Why do you call me good? There is no one good except God alone." So we have plenty of proofs in the gospel themselves that kind of tell us the error that we're in at this point. But the point was this veneration of the prophets. So Muslims say that about Christians, and they are right. But however, they can't see their own veneration of Prophet Muhammad as erroneous, which it actually is. You will hear people say how he was the best person to ever walk the earth. That's absolutely not true, and it's contradictory to the Quran, where Quran says, "Do not make any distinction among the prophets." And the Prophet Muhammad is instructed in the Quran to say, "I am simply a warner. I don't know what's going to happen with me or with you. I am just a warner. Here, I brought this message." So that veneration it may not be as bad as just outright deification, making him a god, but it's very much against the commandments found in the Quran. And one can see why this would be such a big issue. God warns us because of a reason. And most of the time, this deification gives rise to my prophet is better than your prophet. Whereas in there, the prophet of the same prophets of the same ruler, they're the messengers of the same God. They brought the same message, mercy, kindness, humility, honesty, and so on and so on. But in the end, people who neglected that every single commandment, the Crusaders or those so-called Muslims who try to spread the faith with the sword, murder and oppression and so on, they're the ones that actually disobeyed all of this. And now their descendants, or us, we supposedly represent these religions. Well, they made mistakes. That's quite obvious. And we don't have to follow them just because they came before us. This is the message of found in the Quran and found in the Gospel. And it's simply a choice. These people committed genocide to establish their own message. And we don't have to do that. We can object to that and distance ourselves from from whatever they established.